Welcome to Drinking Bros, presented by GhostBed.com. Yeah, welcome to Drinking Bros, kids. Got an oldie but a goodie on the show, one of our faves. A real fucking smarty pants is on the show today. Brian Keating's here. Brian, how are you, Bri Guy?
Good to be back with the brothers.
Look at you, the brothers. You even said it like New Jack City, dude.
Well, he's got street cred.
Accent coming through.
Do you have street cred, or is it what is it in space? What do you call that? Is it space cred?
Multiverse cred, yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah, to be the most street cred legit professor is not the biggest flex in the world. Okay,
No.
I don't know, man.
Well, I think
it might be.
I think it might be that dude from Colombia that was like, yeah, I just kind of casually do heroin from time to time. It's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Sorry, what?
Yeah, that guy rocks.
What'd you say?
Brian, you doing heroin from time to time just to keep the senses alert?
No, no needle drugs. I gotta keep it clean. My boss, good old Gavin, is gonna check on me.
Yeah, no needles. I like that policy.
Gavin with that haircut, he's definitely on the booger sugar, though. You can tell,
that
right?
kind of stuff.
Oh, Newsom?
Never stopped it.
Yeah, hasn't ever. Is Newsom your boss? Really?
Well, he's a public employee, technically.
He's the governor, yeah. He's the ultimate boss of the University of California system where I work, yeah.
Wow, that's not good. Shit. What are you working on these days?
Well, we're working on understanding the age of the universe, whether there was a Big Bang, whether the universe will last forever, and also whether or not we're alone in the universe. These are the really biggest topics you could ever study, and we're not that much closer, but every day we make a little bit of progress. So we built a telescope in the last 4 years, an observatory called the Simons Observatory in Chile at about 17,000 feet. Got about $200 million invested in that, and that just turned on, in the last few weeks. So we're hoping to get some data in this coming year in 2025, and that data will hopefully really change the way we look at whether there was an origin of our universe, whether the universe has always been here, and whether the universe is going to come to an end, and when we can stop paying taxes.
Now, when you say come to an end, there's big crunch and big freeze. Are we still doing that, or is there some other theory?
Yeah, there's a couple different scenarios for the end of the universe. So, there's a couple scenarios for the beginning of the universe too. The challenges with these things is are they hidden? Are they permissible to be known by the laws of physics, by the laws of observation? I can't see you guys, even if I had a super powerful telescope here, because the horizon, fades away, curves away, despite what the flurfers might believe. There is a curved horizon, so I can't, but I can infer that you're here. There's many ways I could, gather information about you. But there are certain things called event horizons that may preclude us from ever knowing what the truth is about the actual origin point of the universe itself, and for that reason, it's both shrouded in mystery and shrouded sometimes in a lot of bullshit, because it's very easy to make a prediction about something that can't be observed, right? Because you can't be proven wrong, and so I think that's the challenge of being a scientist nowadays is kind of avoiding hype and really looking at the legit things that we can say, and when we can't know something, say we don't know, or we can't know, and don't be afraid to do that. And I think a lot of my colleagues, unfortunately, are not, used to admitting that they don't know something. And so it puts us in this position of a lot of proliferation of hype, so to speak.
We had Michio Kaku on the show. Big fan of him,
Speaking
obviously.
Of hypes.
Yeah, speaking of hypes, and he's older. He's an older gentleman, and, he's interested in the same theories and answers and questions that you have. Does it worry you at all that you'll never, ever get the answers you're actually seeking, and that you'll die before you'll get the answers that you've been working every single minute of your life on?
Well, shit, it didn't until now.
Yeah, it should. It should. It freaks me the fuck out, man. It does.
Where's my Glock?
Yeah.
Where's my Glock?
Exactly.
That better be Gen 4 if you're in California. Gen 5 is illegal.
Gen 5 is illegal now. But no, in all seriousness, does that ever keep you up at night where you're like, man, I'm doing all this work, and it's day after day after day, but I might never know this answer, and then I just will die?
It doesn't, because it's not as cut and dry as that, and for good reason. Science isn't really only about like, oh, you made this huge breakthrough, you discovered the origin of the universe. I mean, how many times can that actually happen, right? But there's a lot of incremental breakthroughs that occur on a daily basis. And I'm speaking not just to be glib, but not just about like, well, we teach and we educate every day and we make progress on an experiment or a line of code. No. I mean, we're actually learning a tremendous amount about how the universe is structured, and we know a lot more than we did, say, when I was starting off my graduate career 25, 30 years ago. And so I say that in the context of the progress that we've made can be really measured exquisitely accurately. For example, when I started graduate school in 1993, fresh faced, didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, and I started thinking about cosmology. I thought these guys were total idiots, because they couldn't tell you if the universe was 10 billion years old or 20 billion years old. So that'll be like you have a father and you don't know if he's older than you or not. Like, I mean, maybe that could be the case for certain people, the brand new stepmom or something like that. But really, we had 100% uncertainty on the age of the universe. Now we know the age of the universe as precisely as I can look at you guys and tell you what half, whether you were born in the morning or the day or the nighttime. In other words, within a few hours of precision out of 40, 50 years, however old you guys are. So, no.
90s, baby. 90s, baby. Yeah, continue.
90s? Okay. All right.
No, I'm kidding. Totally kidding.
In sync, and you got the in sync lunchbox, did you?
Yeah, all of it.
Yeah. So no, the progress is tangible. We didn't know, what the masses. We didn't know how many quarks there were. We didn't know anything about the Higgs boson. This is like in 30 years. Now, 30 years is a long time to a person, but over the span of human civilization, just look at how much technology has advanced, and a lot of the byproducts of what we do in cutting edge physics don't immediately throw off scientific, technological benefits. But in my case, it does. I mean, the internet was in part invented by physicists working in the Large Hadron Collider and wanting to share data. And you look for the extremes. Where do you find the most extreme, the most amount of data, the most amount of energy, the most amount of matter? Well, it's going to be in the fundamental sciences, the kind of stuff that I do. So stuff that Kaku does, on the other hand, is both secluded from criticism, because what he's predicting is stuff that you can't do in a lifetime, you can't do in this century. Maybe it doesn't even exist, but maybe if it does exist, you won't be able to know about it until 2020, until the year 2500, right? So those guys have kind of ultimate job security. And the job of people like me who build experiments is kind of be like Doge and like get rid of these, people that are basically just, kind of trumpeting the same predictions for the last 30, 40 years, and bring to it observation. Say, look, you predicted this. We didn't see this. You can't keep saying the same thing and expecting different results, right? So, no, in an experiment, it's very different. I don't know how my colleagues in the theoretical, like Kaku does it. For example, I mean, he's not a practicing scientist anymore. I mean, God love him, he's 80 years old or whatever, but he's old enough, he should be relaxing and being president or something like that. I don't know how the theoretical physicists deal with it when they can't even prove themselves wrong. At least I can do an experiment to prove something wrong or prove something actually occurred. And so I don't have that existential ennui about my profession, for that reason. And there's always more stuff to learn. I mean, just in the last few years, I mean, this whole explosion of AI has really transformed the way I do research and the way I think about what it is that a scientist should be doing.
Yeah. So speaking of proving things wrong, since Friedman in the early 1920s, we thought the Big Bang was kind of the standard. But because we saw, and it led to a whole host of other problems too, but we saw that the universe was expanding because of Hubble. And then we're like, well, if it's expanding, it must have at some point all been in one spot. That makes sense, right, intellectually. And then we go back and back and back, and we're like, well, it expanded too much in the early period, so we have to deal with inflation, as it's called. And now there's a lot of, I don't know if doubt is even the right word, but a lot of criticism of the theory as a whole. Can you go into that? Like, what did we discover that's new that makes us think maybe the Big Bang wasn't the origin, or if there is an origin at all?
Yeah. So these are the oldest, questions, that humanity has really asked since we, kind of crawled out of caves in 250,000 years ago. It's a natural question. Where did it come from? How did we get here? And that still continues. And the challenge with science is like we don't actually prove stuff. Like I can't prove to you the Earth is round, and in fact, it's not perfectly round. It has these characteristics of what's called an oblate spheroid. It's a little bit like a football, not quite. Shout out to the Super Bowl. But the point being that it bulges a little bit because it's rotating about the equator. So, like many of us, it bulges around the equator, right? And so the statement that the Earth is round is not true, but it's more true than the statement the Earth is flat. So to say that the universe had a Big Bang is a statement which you would like to be able to prove, but in fact we can't actually have direct evidence from that time period because it obviously happened over 13 billion years ago. So what we do is we look for indirect evidence. We look for the conditions of fossils, kind of like we want to learn about what was the Paleolithic time period like, or the Jurassic time period like. We look for fossils. We look for things that have traveled through time that bear the imprint of the physical conditions in which they were made.
Right.
So in the case of the Big Bang, the stuff that's made are the elements in the periodic table, for example, or are in the case of what I study, waves of gravity called gravitational radiation. And so if you see those things, they are harbingers of the early universe's conditions. And so you use those as thermometers or as scales to measure the mass or the content of the universe. So right now, what I always say to my students is, when you discover a flaw, it might lead to a new law. In other words, you might learn something new. So when we had the Big Bang, that overthrew the previous paradigm, which is that the universe was static, eternal, steady state, and existed forever. Now, that doesn't mean that every single person on Earth believes that. In fact, there are colleagues today who don't believe that, who believe the universe didn't have a Big Bang. They're in the minority, and science is not necessarily done by majority opinion or authority opinion. But it goes by preponderance of evidence, and there is a level of which consensus does make a difference. And it's different than saying, oh, well, like you scientists all believed in the COVID vaccine, so, or you believe in global warming, so why should I trust you? It's very different, right, guys? I mean, if you think about like the stakes for you to inject some, messenger RNA into your kid's body is a lot different than the stakes of believing whether or not neutrons were created in the first, 280 seconds or 270 seconds, right? The different stakes, right? So in a sense, there's less to be, and that's why I think there are so much, misguided, in some cases, passion around, say, the whole UFO question, right? Because people do believe that the UFOs and UAPs will have an effect on their daily lives. I think that's personally nonsense, but we can talk about that later. But the point about cosmology is when the stakes are lower, like believing in the Big Bang, quote unquote, or not believing in it, that doesn't impact your daily life, right? It's not going to change lower egg prices. It's not going to, change, how many followers you have on Instagram.
But it will change religion, not to interrupt you. It will change people's religion and then the way they view the world, though. And that's also a big problem.
Over time.
Because there's going to be people that wake up with this idea that they've been taught for ever and generations, and then, hey, it's not true. So what do we believe in after all?
But even the biggest, it's really funny. It's Always Sunny does a great bit on this. Even science is wrong sometimes, and he says he makes everybody look like a bitch. The whole scene is really funny. But the biggest scientific breakthroughs of all time, almost all of them have been not necessarily disproven, but been proven only somewhat correct, or only correct under these conditions or something like that, right?
That's right.
Provisional. So, provisionally correct, or only correct under these circumstances, right? So general relativity, for example, the miracle year of 1905 is probably the biggest year in science in at least so far as I know in history. And it turns out it doesn't talk about the small part of the world, the quantum world at all, right? And Einstein knew that later in life, and he died that kind of morose soliloquy you went on earlier about him regretting his entire life.
Yes,
Einstein literally died in a hospital bed trying to figure out the theory of everything, as they call it.
And that's why I asked you, because the other thing too is like with the Big Bang Theory in particular. This is a huge one for religious zealots and all that other stuff, and everybody will die on this hill about what actually happened. And what if you proved it?
I think if you what
if you proved it one way or the other?
I think if your faith hangs in the balance over what mechanisms brought all this into existence, like physical mechanisms brought into existence, then you're not really a terribly faithful person, probably, right? Not to say that you should believe one thing as literal truth versus something else because of that. But like the Christendom doesn't hinge on whether or not God used the process of evolution to create things or just like sand. You know what I mean? It doesn't make any fucking sense to even think about that, in my opinion.
Well, I agree with you, but we always keep an open mind because, after all these 9 years of doing this on the show and having guys like you on, science is always changing, and it should be, because hopefully technology improves, like you said earlier, AI improves and all that other stuff, and we're able to look back and change science and understand what happened, what could happen in the future, and everything else. But there's just people who aren't willing to believe that. With the Big Bang in particular, with what you're working on, there's a lot of people who freak out about shit like that. And I wonder if they ever hit you up and say, hey, why are you looking into this? Why do you even believe it's something other than what we've been taught?
Oh, yeah, yeah. And I mean, just, historical point of fact, the Big Bang model, yes, Alexander Friedman and others contributed to the mathematical understanding of it, but it was really this Catholic priest named George Lemaitre. Yeah, who had this idea, and as soon as he came up with this idea, first of all, Einstein thought he was a nutcase, but this priest, to give him his credit, he was like, I don't want this used by the Pope, which it immediately was, to justify, the description of Genesis, 1:1. So it's very dangerous to do that, by the way. Not necessarily for, the scientists who say, oh, well, I think scientists might have more of, a feeling of anathema towards religion than the converse. In other words, someone who's religious can always say, as everyone from Galileo, Descartes, everyone has done throughout the ages, was to say, and Isaac Newton especially, I mean, he was deeply religious. His biggest accomplishment, he said, is he died a virgin like his hero, Jesus Christ. So he wrote way more about religion than he did about science, and then he was probably arguably the greatest scientist to ever live. So the statement that, people will have their opinions upheld, I actually don't, or upended, I don't actually think that's true. In a lot of cases, I think people will just reverse engineer their narrative to then comport with the scientific data, and that happened during the Big Bang and happened after the Big Bang. I mean, don't forget for 2,000 years after Jesus, really the Big Bang model came about in the late 1920s. So there was no evidence for it. There was no even theory for it, and people thought it was all steady state. So what did the religious people do with that? Brutal fact, as according to science, that the universe was eternal. Well, it didn't affect their faith, right? I mean, arguably faith was a lot stronger back then. And I think the same thing will happen with everything from aliens to if we discover inflation took place. I remember we did claim inflation took place in 2020 and 2014. My experiment at the South Pole that I invented and co-led at one time, we announced we detected inflation, and on the front page of the New York Times were people saying this proves there's no God, and then religious journals proves that God did it all. So
let's go into it though. What could have do we have any idea what might have caused what we're perceiving as inflation? Because just a quick description, there is the speed of light because atoms have mass, and mass gets heavier as it moves faster, right? It's rudimentary, reductive, but that's basically what it is. But this stuff moved, I think it's like 1/32,000th of a second. It got as big as a basketball or something like that, and it expanded rapidly after that again or something. I don't remember the exact numbers, but inflation moved the early universe faster than we can calculate it, essentially, right? Or faster than our laws.
For the audience at home, we're not talking about financial inflation.
No, although that's coming down.
But everybody's talking about that now. Just to clarify, continue.
Yeah,
but do we have any idea of what might have caused that? Because to me, it always sounded like, I don't know. I feel like I like simple explanations of things, and all of our, like the Big Crunch makes a lot of sense to me, where all the matter in the universe eventually gets sucked into one giant black hole. And why wouldn't that pour out into somewhere else or pour right out of that black hole or something? You know what I mean? All
right, so here's what I want you guys to do. We're going to do an experiment. First time ever. Take some hard as F.
Hard AF seltzers. Done. I'll grab that out of the fridge. Yeah. How many cans? How many cans do I grab?
I want one for each of you guys.
Okay.
Hang on.
We're going to do a randomized controlled trial. So inflation is a lot like...
I'll get an old one. Actually, I don't want to waste it.
Perfect. You forced me to drink, Brian.
Yeah, no,
Not as
I know.
Friday.
I never do it. I never
I
do
know
it,
it's hard.
especially
I
on
know, it's-
Fridays. Dear God.
Sorry
man.
sorry
right.
to break your
So
streak of
keep
20 minutes.
keep it open or closed.
So one of you guys shake yours up, and the other one keep it still. Okay.
Okay. He's gonna
So-
shake his up. I'm
Ken's
gonna
gonna
keep mine
shake his
still.
up.
Yep.
Vigorous. Get that going. There you go. All right, now I want one of you guys, both you guys, to open on the count of 3. You ready? And hold it up to the camera. I can't see yours, Dan.
Okay.
There we go. Okay, 1, 2, 3. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So
I just
Dan's
want to
poured
see
out
you
all
guys-
over the floor. Mine did not. For the audio listeners.
That's right. I just want to see you guys mess up your studio.
Yeah.
No.
All a
So
huge prank.
what inflation really and if you had taken, you ever when you're a kid put one of those in the freezer?
Oh, yeah.
You ever froze a beer or something, guys?
Yes, on action. We do it all the time here because people are gunning through them. So we'll put them in the freezer, forget over the weekend, they come in, they're all exploded. Yes.
That's right. So if you super cool alcohol, it won't actually get like super hard, right? It could still stay liquid form, but then as soon as you open it, it'll be even worse than what happened with Dan's, right? It goes everywhere, freaking explodes, right? And actually the same thing can happen if you heat up water. If you ever take water in a perfectly pristine cup and you put it into the microwave, you can nuke it for like 6 minutes. It won't actually boil, but if you take it out, it'll explode, and it's actually extremely dangerous to do that. So I'm not advocating to do that.
That happened to me. I did that. You're right. And I couldn't figure out why that happened.
Yeah. So what happens is that you have this is what's called either super saturated or you're basically causing what's called a phase transition. So when you shook up the beer or you shook up the seltzer rather, you're actually taking the carbon dioxide that's in there and it has nowhere to go because you didn't open the can up. Now when you open the can, the phase changes from liquid to gas and it does so really, really quickly if you've shaken it up because there's more gas trying to dissolve in a finite, still the same amount size can, right? Still 12-ounce can. So when you do that in the universe, what the theory behind inflation is that inflation was a field like the seltzer, except it's filling all of space and time. It was impregnated, filled with carbon dioxide, but instead of carbon dioxide, we call them quantum fluctuations. And when you open it, when you release it, when the phase transition takes place, expansion is unavoidable. And actually, the expansion can take place faster than the speed of light. And when that happens faster than the speed of light, things that are farther away than the age of the universe times the speed of light are now, in a sense, closer to you, and they can actually impact you. And what would happen in the universe is that there'd be a local region of space that had a certain value of this quantum field called the inflation field or inflaton, and then it would merge with another bubble, and then those bubbles would grow, and regions that had the kind of right properties to eventually create matter, energy, and so forth later on down the line, those merge together. And then there are very many tiny bubbles that you guys never saw in the seltzer can. Same exact thing happens. Those are too small to merge.
Yeah.
So some of those basically get blown away by the expanding liquid. And yes, you can't make a perfect analogy, but that is sort of what it had to exist, right? You guys had to already have the seltzer on hand. So where was the inflation before the Big Bang, before the spark that ignited it? Well, that has to be postulated that it always existed.
Yeah.
So in that sense, the steady state does kind of play a role, except it's not called the steady state. It's called the multiverse. The multiverse is the giant can of seltzer that exists everywhere in all of space and all of time for all time. And that's the precondition that has to exist. And then once you stipulate that occurs, then everything else that you described, Dan, can happen.
Yeah, and by the way, the same thing will happen if you put fill up your thermos with hot water, like super hot water, cover it, and then shake it up. It activates and it'll start producing steam. And when you take it off, you'll hear that pop or whatever.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Do we know what quantum fluctuations are? What is actually causing that yet? Like, I like it's part of the only time I've ever heard that phrase is from Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, those are very allied concepts. So what we think about as fundamental, we're used to thinking of like particles as, atoms and stuff like that. That's not really true, right? So at the base level of the way that physics and quantum mechanics explains things, what we perceive as particles are what are called excitations, and they're excitations in what's called a quantum field. And so light particles, photons that we see each other with, those are excitations in the photon field. Those are instantiations, particles of photons, packets of energy, if you will. And then there's packets of electrons. Electrons can have electrons have a field as well, a quantum field. They can be created, they can be destroyed. There are certain conditions that need to occur. You can't arbitrarily create of very extreme large amounts of energy in an arbitrarily small amount of time, for example. That's a Heisenberg uncertainty relation. You can't create them with arbitrary velocity and know exactly where they are. That's an uncertainty. So yes, they're coming into and out of existence, and the Higgs boson is also a field called the Higgs field. And so the fundamental things, according to physicists, are fields. And so the inflation field has existed for all time, just like the photon field exists right now in your room. There's some probability right in front of you for two photons to come together, annihilate each other, and create a pair of electron and a positron, which is its antimatter cousin. And so as long as you conserve certain quantities, like energy is conserved, matter is not conserved, right? I just gave you an example where something with no mass, photons, creates something with actual mass, like an electron. But energy is always conserved, momentum is always conserved, other things called spin and things like that are conserved. And so as long as you don't violate those conditions, yes, you can create essentially anything. And then if the universe had these conditions that it was filled with this field at early times, you could create a universe, and basically a spontaneous, according to some colleagues, you basically create an anti-universe that travels back in time, and those are really mind-boggling possibilities. But everyone agrees on this fact, that the universe was much hotter and much denser when it was much, much younger. There's no evidence that refutes that. Now, we can argue about how much denser, how much hotter, and when does that law of physics break down. But the laws of physics hold, as Dan, it's not one over a 32nd hundredth of a second. It's 10 to the minus 32 seconds. In other words, a decimal point, 32 zeros, 31 zeros, and then a 1. So this is an incredible accomplishment. And so that's another reason I don't feel depressed at all. I mean, that's an amazing thing to say that physicists can predict what were the physical conditions like as early as a trillionth of a trillionth of a trillionth of a second after the origin of the universe. Yes, wild. I can't tell you exactly what happened at the origin of the universe any more than I can say, well, what did you look like before your parents met each other? But you maybe I'm not ruling that out, right? I mean, can you imagine a day when you could actually predict what did somebody look like before their parents even met each other? I mean, it's not outside the laws of physics, so in principle, it could be possible.
Yeah,
you got CRISPR babies, dude.
Well, yeah, but I mean, certainly gene editing is a thing now. I think there's better ways to do it than CRISPR now, actually. But what you're describing, I think, is quantum field theory, right? Which is kind of the new hotness. It used to be kind of the Big Bang theory, general relativity, and then string theory, M theory was the hot thing for a while, and now quantum field theory seems to be some attempt at unification, right?
I mean, quantum field theory has always been around. I think what maybe you're talking about, it's string theory. So quantum field theory is not a theory of everything that you mentioned before. Like Einstein died. It's too bad because he could have been famous, right? If he had just done that, he could have been a famous guy.
Fucking loser.
Yeah, loser. God damn it. That's the same way I look at Tim Cook and those guys. What a fucking loser, man.
Cousin marrying losers.
Yeah, right? Steve Jobs, loser.
Well, no,
he's loser.
Einstein gave his wife his Nobel Prize money so she would take the kids and leave so he could marry his first cousin.
Really?
Yeah.
Was she hotter?
No. No, she looked like my grandma when she was like 40, actually.
The one that I'll never be able to get over is Hawking, dude, leaving his wife in that wheelchair all fucked up. And he was like, nope, I've got to have the nurse. And you're just like, Jesus Christ, man.
Well,
and what's crazy about that story, just aside. So he couldn't talk, right? And you were making the voice. So the voice was from his computer programmer who designed the voice synthesizer so he could actually communicate with the world, was the ex-husband of the nurse that he married.
No fucking way.
So this guy is the ultimate cuck. Yeah. So he got his wife
the ultimate cuck, dude.
So quantum field theory is a well understood. It's been the basis for the last 50, 60 years of quantum field theory. Richard Feynman played a huge role. Dirac. It's basically just a different description of looking at the interactions between light and matter. So when quantum mechanics came about, it was really at first it was just a description of how an atom, say, behaves in a classical universe. Like if you have an atom, and originally people like Niels Bohr and they actually modeled the atom as a little like planetary system, right, with a nucleus instead of the sun, and then an electron going around. Now we know that's totally wrong, but at least it gave very accurate answers for things like the wavelength of light emitted by a hydrogen atom, the spectrum of light. But then later it was realized, well, if you're going to talk about, say, how light behaves, you also have to treat the quantum mechanics of light and not just the quantum mechanics of hydrogen. And so that was the merger of that. That's what quantum field theory really became.
Isn't there something about electromagnetism that Faraday used to talk about? I think it was kind of a breakthrough in the middle part of the 19th century where he described, like, instead of what we call action at a distance, which became spooky action at a distance when with quantum entanglement, but it was like instead of one thing bumping into another thing, there is some direct line between these two things, and they're being affected at the same time, but not in the way that we perceive it, right? That's what the original idea of a field came from that, if I'm not mistaken.
Faraday was the one that's right. Faraday came up with the idea, the concept of a field, and he was very interesting because he really wasn't mathematically trained at all, but he had incredible physical intuition. I actually spoke at his, institution, the Royal Institution, in the summer of 2023, and I got to play with his actual experiments where he takes these magnets and then he has these iron filings, these little grains of iron, and he would sprinkle them down and then glue down a piece of wax paper, and you could see these magnetic lines of force that he called them. So yeah, you're right. He did come up with that, and a little bit different than the spooky action at a distance has to do with quantum entanglement. But this is actually classical. It's a classical field theory. But Faraday and then Maxwell later was responsible for the first attempts at unification. So unification is a very strong principle in science, which says that we perceive these laws of nature being very different. Like at first glance, you don't really think of a magnet as having anything to do with, say, a battery, right? I mean, they're not. They don't seem to be really related. But Maxwell and Faraday also showed experimentally, Maxwell theoretically and Faraday experimentally, that actually you can perceive them as different manifestations depending on, of all things, the motion of an observer, right? So imagine you have a wire and it's carrying a current through it. It's just a straight piece of wire. You attach it to a battery on one side, ground on the other side. And you have a current flowing through it. Those are charges going through it, electrons in the case of what we normally think about as electricity. And that current is provided. Now imagine you're moving alongside that wire exactly the same speed as the electrons are flowing. Well, they don't produce a current, right? They're stationary. So you see a bunch of static charges, right? But to someone that's sitting at rest with respect to the wire, they see a current, and every current produces a magnetic field via what's called Faraday's right-hand rule. So that means that there's a transformation between electric field and electromagnetic field, magnetic field and electric field, that is dependent on the velocity of the observer. And that made Maxwell uncomfortable, and so he came up with this idea of the ether. He said, well, actually, the only way to get waves and stuff to travel through it is to have some medium like water. We don't see just waves without water or waves without sound, air with sound without air. So how do you instantiate that? Well, he said you have to have this medium called the ether. And later on, we got rid of that thanks to experiments done at my alma mater in Cleveland called Case Western and other places that really were the foundation for why Einstein said, no, actually, the one speed that everyone agrees upon is the speed of light. On that, they can't disagree. And then that led to the unification of electricity and magnetism as one force. And then physicists are greedy, and they said, well, if we can do that for these two seemingly disparate forces like electricity and magnetism, let's do it for all the freaking forces. Let's do it for the nuclear force. Let's do it for gravity. And it actually worked for the nuclear forces, but it doesn't work for gravity. And that's kind of the theory of everything, that people really want to see a unification to say that actually, guys, there's only one law of nature. It's not gravity, electricity, magnetism, nuclear force, and the two types of nuclear force. No, it's just one master force called the theory of everything. And so far, no one's been able to demonstrate a consistent way how that can occur.
Is there any reason to believe that should be a thing, to be honest? I mean, why? I mean, certainly, who knows? But is gravity, the four forces are strong, weak, nuclear, electromagnetism, and gravity. Is there any reason to believe that gravity is going to have some relationship to electromagnetism, for example?
It's actually worse than that. No, it's very precise. I often point that out when I'm talking to, very eminent. I've talked to 21 Nobel Prize winners on my podcast, and yeah, I always say to them, there's no letter from God that says it has to be unified, right?
But John Mayer did write the song about it, so
that's true.
Gravity, and that's, I think, had a lot to do with
how did it go again?
Gravity.
Yeah, it's better the second time.
Yeah, and you got to really do the face there, and then John Mayer was able to help with that. So,
he's got a piece on it too.
Who am I to dispute, a Nobel laureate like John?
Well, what's new in the science world right now? I know James Webb's up there snapping pictures. We're getting They're snapping dick pics of the dick pics of the universe. Right?
Yes.
What I like to see are the old Hubble photographs of the deep field versus the new James Webb. It's just like getting a new iPhone or some shit. Well, it's like going from iPhone 4 to the current one, I guess.
It's all the same, dude. Fuck Steve Jobs. We're all this is bullshit.
No, it's an 8K camera.
No, you want to do some real study, dude? I'll pay you to do an experiment. Tell me why every time a new goddamn iPhone comes out, the last model completely shits the bed, dude, and then I've got to buy the new one.
I know.
That's what I want to know, dude.
But it's for your kids. Well, my kids at least, they just love it. It's like, oh, you don't want the iPhone 13, 14, Dad.
It's the
that's
same.
For me.
It's the same goddamn thing from 10 years ago.
No,
I
but
could
it's
give
not
a
for
shit
him.
less.
He doesn't even have one.
No, and I get it. But to Dan's point, the pictures we're getting right now out of
James
Webb's are just mind altering, and like you can take mushrooms and just stare at these all night. I know some people have argued back and forth on the internet of, well, hey, they're coloring these to make them show up more and everything else.
Oh, well, everything's colored, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everything is that's fine. I mean, in every image that you see, and I'm sure your producers, know this better than even I can explain it. But the point is, you've got transistors; they can only be on or off, right? So what we have in our screens is we have put 3 transistors in each pixel, and then we put a color filter over each one, red, green, and blue, and then they can just amp up the amount of each one that goes into a 10-bit color. You can have 10 different color, 2 to the 10th, 1,024 different levels of color. No, so that's totally kosher. There's nothing, they're not like playing games or like, oh, actually they're hiding stuff. No, every image, your cameras right now, your monitor, they all do that because, as I said, the transistors can only be on or off. So
that's how a camera works.
No, totally. Yeah. And look, the images are beautiful, and I think what I love about what we're seeing and the colorization and everything else is very similar to what you're doing in your space right now, where you're making it easy for everybody else to understand. Therefore, we're not just looking at these images that look like fucking Braille in the distance that we've got to run our hands over and trying to figure out what planets those are. You're coloring them. You're making them easier for everybody else. Same with you and your podcast. Like, you're able to at least dumb it down for the idiots like me and not the smarties like this fag next to me. So
I never dumb it down.
But that's the thing is, like, you make it accessible for everybody else. And that's what I love about the images we're seeing that are coming in.
I think, when people don't do that, I say you're basically immoral. Like, every scientist is paid by the public. And, I'm not going to go off on, some Obama tangent or you didn't build that. But the point is, like, I teach at a public university. I went to public high schools and elementary school. I could not be a scientist. Nobody could be a scientist without actually having public support. And then when it's like, if you were to ask me something and I said to you, oh, you can't understand that without the training that I have and blah, blah, blah. It'd be like you go to your boss if you work at you work in an office and you're just like, your boss says, well, what are you up to this week? What did you do this week? And you're like, oh, you can't understand it. Like, you'd be shit canned immediately. And I think scientists tend to do that because we have this exalted opinion of how important what we do is, even though we can't actually put our name, our finger on it. Like you said earlier, I can't, to say that like every day I have to justify my existence or I'll have an existential crisis. I don't have that problem. But a lot of what scientists do is very incremental. Therefore, it's not that significant. It's important, but it's not that significant, right? Like no scientist is curing cancer every day, right? We'd have 1 billion cures for cancer. We don't have that. It's incremental. And so sometimes we have to justify what we do and say, well, you can't understand. It's very sophisticated. I had to go to graduate school and undergrad for 10 years to get to where I'm at. So how can I possibly explain it to you? And I actually, get mad at my colleagues who do that. And that's part of the reason I started my YouTube channel, to explain things in a fun way that I enjoy it. I kind of really have, a challenge to explain it to people. The other day I did a video. It didn't get I went on Andrew Huberman's podcast. You may have heard of him. He's another podcaster. He's like the
lesser known than us. Lesser known than us. Yes.
He's the West Coast version of the Drinkin' Bro.
Sure, but lesser known. Lesser known. Absolutely.
That guy's like an anti-drinking bro. That guy will not drink alcohol, man. I'm sorry. I tried to get him to partake when I was up with him. But we did this whole thing, and it was about the human eye and perception. He's a PhD researcher. He's an expert in the human eye and physiology and getting sunlight exposure. And so afterwards, he made like a little mistake in some of the reasoning that he had for something called the green flash. I don't know if you guys ever been out on a boat or out in the ocean. You see the sunset, and you see there's something called the green flash. The sun turns briefly green. And he suspected, well, it must be like a physiological effect. And I said, no, it's actually an atmospheric optical effect. And, so I made this video and I was pretty happy about it. I had a lot of, green screen and I had all these animations and graphics. And like, it got like 2,000 or 3,000 views. It wasn't like that great. And I put a lot of energy into it. And I was like, shit, this sucks. Like I put all this time into it. I even have a guest appearance from Andrew Huberman. What the hell? Yeah. And then like a couple days later, I come downstairs and one of my kids is watching YouTube and I'm like, oh, what's he watching? And he's watching like my video. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty good. Like, he's like, wow, that was a really good video, Dad. And he is like 10, 11-year-old kid. And I just thought, wow, like, it's fun to explain stuff to a way that like an 11-year-old can understand. I'd never talked to him about it. And I'm like, well, the scientists that don't do that feel like they're above it, to me, they're missing out on, one of the responsibilities of the moral obligations of what it means to be a scientist. I mean, I don't pay you guys, right? And like, I might buy your seltzer or whatever, but I don't pay you. But like, you pay your taxes, I assume, and that pays part of my salary.
Try not to.
Yeah, we try hard.
Yeah, we try not to in Texas. Sorry, if all property taxes are brutal here, man.
If all of my tax dollars went to scientific discovery, then I would pay them.
Yeah, and my
I'm not saying I don't.
My science, exactly.
Just saying that
I'm saying our CPAs figure out a way not to. But
it's doing a lot of work, dude.
But if I was funding things, I would fund, why Florida men are addicted to meth, like things like that. Like, what's that magnetism there? About a bag of meth and a Florida man. Yeah. How do they come together? That's what I would fund scientifically.
Einstein said if you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it enough, I think. And to me, it's always like the stuff that I'm expert at, it's always been, we call it, in the military, we call it train the trainer, right? Like part of it is the efficiency of sending one senior level or mid-level person to go learn a skill and then come back and teach it to everybody else. But I think the bigger use of that is that the trainer person becomes an absolute expert in it by hearing from people that know more about it than them and then telling people who know less about it, right? There's something about that process that makes you quite a bit better at understanding what you're doing. And I think that's why I was talking to one of my Navy SEAL friends about this yesterday, actually. It's really important that you have a mentor, and it's really important that you, at the point that you feel confident, find somebody to mentor as well in your life, regardless of if you're in production in Hollywood or you're a fucking baseball player or whatever
coaches,
it is. It doesn't matter. Like whatever you're in, you need to have that process. I think it's super important.
I do too. And to that point, I want you to explain. Because I know you're busy and you got to teach and do all the scientist bullshit. Your fan, Mr. Fancy Jeans.
Yeah, are you funded by USAID, Brian?
Yeah, because if it is, that funding's going to be cut, bro, probably by the end of the show. But can you, for the dummies out there like myself, can you explain what we're seeing UAP-wise as far as UFOs and drones and all that other stuff? We got a DM from a listener, I think we read it the other day live on air, about drones in Ohio that nobody's reporting on. He sent us images and videos, and then the drones in New Jersey and all this other stuff. What are we actually seeing and what's going on out there, and why isn't the government saying anything? Trump said he would before he got into office. Now he's in office.
He already did.
He did. What did he say?
Pam Bondi said that they were government drones.
They were.
Yeah.
So
I told you the whole time.
I understand
that's what
that,
they were doing.
But can you confirm that? Because you're the scientist. Pam Bondi's not. She's just kind of hot.
I'm not only I'm not only a scientist, but I'm also a pilot, and so some of them are just obvious. I mean, they have like the recognition lights, or the red on the right wing, et cetera, the green.
And then when you look at it from a distance in the dark, it looks like 5 different craft. Like no, those are lights. Have you ever seen a fucking airplane before?
But I've never seen an alien, dude. So
yeah, but an airplane. If you look at the front face of an airplane, it's coming right for you, but it's nighttime, and all you can see are 4 or 5 red lights on the bottom. It's going to look like 4 different headlights.
Yeah.
Oh, I get it. Flashing. But I mean, why not tell everybody this? And
because
then,
Biden was asleep.
I understand that, but then you have these Senate hearings where they're talking about liquid fucking animals or aliens that they've scooped up in other countries. We've got multiple crashes here. We've got the equipment somewhere. What do we believe, and what do you know?
I mean, you notice like one thing, again, I don't have any special knowledge about the drone situation, but I do remember one thing, which is that there wasn't one single flight into, say, Newark, New Jersey, where most of the activity was. There wasn't one single flight that was canceled.
Or delayed.
Or delayed, yeah.
Not because of that, anyways.
Right, exactly. So there's the only way that can happen is if the FAA knows about it. There are things called temporary flight restrictions, and they could put, basically they can lock down any airspace that they want, and they can actually push these things off the coast and move them away. And most of the confirmed or the claim to be confirmed, sightings of UAPs, Tic Tacs, or whatever. I talked to this guy Ryan Graves a year or so ago, with one of his.
I know Ryan Graves. Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually had on his, one of his buddies from the same squadron, who's a friend of mine who lives here in San Diego, Ariel Kleinerman, who is also has a undergraduate degree in physics from Princeton, and they were talking about how these things they only seem to occur in what are called military restricted zones, warning zones. So you see those on aeronautical charts. You can buy these charts from from a pilot store for $5. It'll show you exactly where these things are all spotted. Now, that doesn't prove or disprove anything, but the fact that these things didn't seem to impact commercial aviation, they're spotted primarily around military installations. I believe that there's probably tons of shit. Like Dan, they probably my brother-in-law is a recon Marine. Mm-hmm. He told me he was waterboarded something like 17 times. And he said and he's a big freaking tough guy. You guys would get along great. Shout out to Jim. But the point is he didn't he would say things like they do stuff to us all the time. And the stuff that they do to us, we don't tell you civilians about because you're going to start complaining because you acted the way that you would act, Brian Keating, as a cushy professor at a university. And you'd say, well, I wouldn't want to be waterboarded, so I don't want my brother-in-law to be waterboarded. But he freaking, he was like, I don't get off on it, but he was like, this is part of what defines my identity. And no, I didn't consider it torture. I don't know how you feel, Dan, but the point is they do shit to you guys. They test stuff all the time. They do stuff to test how loyal you are, Dan, all the time. And I wouldn't put any of this shit past the government. So the first explanation shouldn't be the least probable one, which is that interdimensional beings who happen to be about the same size as us have traveled across the greatest expanse in the human imagination, bringing new laws of physics, and then magically gets cited by Uncle Tony with his DJI drone, and we're supposed to all of a sudden say we demand that Trump release the alien files.
This is what I said for years, that any civilization capable of making it here in the first place would without any doubt be capable of being here without us knowing it.
Or they wouldn't have bodies. Or they wouldn't have bodies.
Even if it was even to get a drone here, the technology would have to be so advanced that something like stealth wouldn't even be a problem.
Right, and it isn't. And according to the testimony on the Hill a couple months ago, which I'm sure you saw, we all saw, they're saying they're going past Mach 10, Mach 14.
Well beyond. I think they were up in the 2200 G range for some of these. Now, some of this stuff,
liquid that's able to shapeshift.
Yeah, some of
Terminator 2.
Some of the speeds they were calculating were due to parallaxes and stuff like that. It wasn't real, right? So they think parallaxes is if my camera is moving this way and the object is moving this way, there's an exponential effect on my ability to measure its speed. It's not real, right? That's most of those UFO videos, it's parallaxes. All of them, actually. The ones that are moving super fast, it's always parallax.
Well, why were they saying on the Hill, Brian, that these were definitely UAPs? We know the government has the wreckage, and
UAP doesn't mean alien.
Well,
who is we, by the way? I mean, you got talking about Lou Elizondo or guys like David Rush. I mean, these guys, in terms of credibility, they're not necessarily free. I love this fact, Dan, that people always say things like the government lies to us all the time. So let's listen to the guys that are paid for by the government. You were a government employee just as much as I was at that time, and say these people have no other incentive. Excuse me, Lou Elizondo has been on. My wife asked me about him. I'm like, she doesn't know anything about this stuff. She's like, oh, he was on Smartless podcast. I'm like, these guys, there's a huge incentive, right? And or another one is, these guys have been probed, and these guys saw alien biological, samples, and they never say exactly what it is. But my favorite is when they actually say that this thing is defying the laws of physics. And they have, probably not as good a comprehension of physics as Dan does, let alone as I do. And so why are we listening to them about physics? I don't listen to me about being a military F-18 pilot because I'm not, right? I believe you should listen to people like that. But that doesn't mean that they're never wrong. And it doesn't mean that we should listen to them about the effects of physics. That's called authority bias, and that's called like the halo effect. Just because Dan was, in the military doesn't mean he knows everything about what every branch of the military has ever done in its entire history. And so I would say there's a huge incentive for people to have their own narratives, and none of the people I've talked to, seem to be as credible. I've read Lou's book. They sent it to me. He was supposed to come on my podcast, never did. I don't know why.
So is Lou full of shit?
There's some glaring errors in his book. There's a lot of inaccuracies. There's testimonial things that he said that he was head of this thing and that thing. There's a guy, Stephen Greenstreet, on Twitter, who's really good at kind of debunking a lot of the claims that Lou has made. And there's, as I said, there's errors in his book, just basic physics errors. That I would love to talk to him about, and I would give him a fair hearing. I'm not going to throw him under the bus, but for some reason, his people or him decided not to come on after agreeing to send me the material and come on. And then last thing I'll say is I've had on people from the government, Stephen Kirkpatrick, and people from NASA that led these programs to actually come to a conclusion. Because guys, don't you think that me or Michio Kaku or we'd be the most interested to know about this physics and technology that must have existed, in a couple of centuries ago in these alien civilizations for them to get here now. That means we could shortcut 500 years of progress on the human species. We want this to be true more than anybody, but that's why you have to be very skeptical as well.
Okay, because Michael Schellenberger also posted 214 pages of testimony as well in that subcommittee hearing. Schellenberger's a pretty sensible dude.
I think he was just reporting on what he saw.
He was.
Yeah, he's a sensible dude. And there's we have a UAP recovery team that is part of our government, right? I know that for a fact. That's a thing. The way we found it out was through injury reports, people filing workers' compensation claims and disability claims, listing their position as UAP recovery. So that's a thing. It doesn't mean it's alien, though, right? Okay. So, like, if we're testing out some new propulsion tech that's maybe radiological or something, and then you go fucking, you're part of that recovery team and you touch exposed radiological material, well, guess what, bud? You're gonna fucking die.
Yeah.
That's how it works. You know what I mean? It's a dangerous job. It doesn't mean that it's alien necessarily. Now, maybe we find some alien shit at some point, but the burden of proof is going to be on the people making that claim, not everybody else, which is how they like to frame the argument. It's like, well, what do you mean? How do you explain this? Like, I don't know, but you're coming to an explanation that does not solve the problem at all. There's no data for your conclusion.
Right. I mean, I had a podcast. This woman, Amber Rose, is a black lady who's like, I think she dated Kanye, and
sure did. Yeah, I know who Amber Rose is. Okay.
Yeah. So she had me on, and she was saying, I had on this Air Force guy. And he claims, 100% he was like, rectally probed and did this and that. I'm like, well, okay, let's just say that's one possibility. But another possibility is like this guy was an ex-alcoholic or whatever, and maybe his buddies were pranking him, and maybe his buddies are into some strange crap, and they did it, right? And I was like, which is more likely? Interdimensional beings, need some sample from some guy in the 1970s, and then did this to him, and he just remembered it now in 2024 or 5, or his buddies got him totally plastered and did some stuff. I'm not
to
even
his
saying
butthole.
That
to his
rectally.
To his butthole.
Rectally. When Amber Rose was on, did she list her position as reverse cowgirl? Like, what was her position? Because let's face it, she's a fucking OnlyFans model. So what are we doing here as far as like, I'm going to listen to her on her thoughts on fucking space and aliens?
I was on her show. She wrote me. And then she was like, I just had on Neil deGrasse Tyson. So I let Neil do the vetting for me.
I get it, Brian. Are you single? You married?
I'm married.
Boy. I know. But when you're on a show like that and you look at those naturals, you're like, God damn.
Those are natural in the same way that I'm black.
Have you seen her nude? Bob, pull up some nudes.
Not one part of her body is natural.
Those are the UAPs we really should be investigating.
I know. Because, by the way, if the aliens did land and they all look like Amber Rose, my God,
we'd be in trouble.
Bravo.
Yeah, she got the bald head.
I would, yes. Come on in the house.
Forehead.
Come on in the house. I wouldn't let the dirty Guatemalans in, but I'd let the Amber Roses from outer space in. What,
all right,
Brian? It's immigration. Okay, we're doing stuff about it. We're going to fix it. I know you've got to go do important stuff around the world. Tell everybody your podcast and where they can find you. We always love having you on the show, and your show is awesome. Like I mentioned earlier, I love the way you explain everything at a normal level for everybody. So you don't have to be into physics or be, some guy whose IQ is off the charts. You can watch your show and enjoy it and kind of get the gist of everything that's going on in the world.
Yeah, I love talking about science and sharing the love of it. As I said, I think it's my moral obligation as a citizen and whatever to do that for people out there. So yeah, BrianKeating.com is my website. I send out meteorites to lucky people once a month. Dan, did you get my meteorite?
I did, yes. Thank you. I got 2 actually. Thank
did
very
you?
much.
Yeah,
cool. Where's mine, Brian?
Yeah.
I didn't get a meteorite.
It's coming. Just look up tonight. You'll see it. It's coming right for you.
Okay, cool. You're going to drop that down out of the sky for me? You sent him 2 and I got nothing?
Mach 12 coming towards you.
God damn it, Brian. You're lucky today that I didn't go harder on that immigration joke. Look, in all sincerity, I love you. We had you on quite a number of years ago.
Yeah.
To see your success and everything that's happened and on Rogan and everything else and your YouTube channel, man, it's been awesome to watch. You're one of the true good guys who deserves all this shit. So thank you for being here. We greatly appreciate it. Hopefully we didn't fuck up your day, okay?
No. I was looking forward to it all day. Have a great weekend. I hope you enjoy the Super Bowl, and just have a blast, guys. I love following your stuff too. It's really fun to watch you on all the Instagrams and all the intertubes.
Yeah, thanks, buddy.
We
brothers.
appreciate it. Take
See you
care,
soon,
buddy.
Great weekend.
All
Peace.
right.
Bye.
All right, Bobby. We got some sponsors here that put this shit wagon on the air. First and foremost, ghostbed.com/Drinkin Bros. Pull it up, Bob. Pull it up for the audience here. They got to know what they're working with. 50% off for Valentine's Day for your lover out there. Pull it up on the screen. Look at the deals at GhostBed. At GhostBed, you're getting all the deals. And let's face it, you gotta buy your lady or man something nice for Valentine's Day, or maybe you won't get something nice that evening, okay? 50% off mattresses, sheets, pillows, adjustable bases, you name it. They got it over at ghostbed.com/Drinkin Bros. However, I would use the bundle package. Bundle package is the best. Boom. There it is, Bob. Archie, come on up. Come on up on the studio. There you go. Come on up and join us on set. Look at these mattresses on screen in the bundle package. That's what I ordered for me and my wife about 5 years ago, I think. Maybe 5 or 6 at this point. I don't even know what fucking day it. I didn't even know it was your birthday the other day, Dan. So sorry about it, But this one, I got the adjustable base, I got the pillows, I got the mattress, and we didn't get the split king version. I know that's an option as well. They got 6 of them. So ours came with 1 remote control instead of 2. It depends on who you are out there, dude. If you want to stay up later or not and have your lover go to sleep before you or after you, that's all fine. We chose the latter, and I just don't want the line down the middle of the bed, but you might like it, so fucking give it a go, dude. And at checkout, you're going to see a 36-month, 3-year, pay-as-you-go program. No interest as long as you have decent credit over there. So you can stretch it out. You can get that bundle package for 50% off, stretch it out over 3 years. It's like $45, dude. And then, boom, you're good to go. You get a brand new bedroom set in your fucking on Valentine's Day at ghostbed.com/Drinkin Bros. Speaking of fucking, Bob, who do we have up next?
We've got adamandeve.com, the number one place to get all your adult fun toys.
Goddamn right we do. Man. All right. Brian Keating was just on. We're going to have one of our listeners here from North Carolina on here in a second. Archie, what would you recommend for a Brian Keating in this world, or people that just want to have sex with aliens?
Well, he's not. I don't even know if he believes in aliens.
I don't think he does.
But this might make him believe.
Well, I got something for him.
If you're trying to convert him into an alien believer, I think a big fucking alien dong might do it.
All right, what do we got, Bum?
Dan, how do you think aliens would travel here, achieve interstellar travel if they could?
The most likely scenario is that they would warp gravity in front of and behind the aircraft, or the spacecraft, rather.
Okay, but they maybe also would take a wormhole?
Yeah, sure, possibly. I don't think that that's likely, actually. But
I do, Bob.
Because
I do.
The Creature Cox wormhole alien stroker is Brian Keating's #1 preferred hypothetical way.
Look at that thing. That is beautiful. Is that on screen for the people right here?
To wrap a public employee into
It's not. It's a hypothetical.
I said
Yes,
hypothetical.
we're all saying hypothetical.
If I was Brian Keating,
Correct.
I can't speak for the real Brian Keating. I'm saying if I was Brian Keating,
well, we can capture him.
We can.
We can
And then-
capture him and then fucking infiltrate him.
Well, hang on,
You know?
because I don't know that this necessarily goes inside you, Bob.
No,
I think your
this-
penis goes inside that.
Well,
Am I correct?
it depends. There's this
Yes.
theory that you put a fleshlight in somebody's ass and you fuck that. Is that gay?
Yeah, that's the theory of gay-vitivity.
Yeah, gay-vitivity,
And it's you're gay. You're
It's
still
general.
gay doing
It's
that.
general gay-vitivity.
You're still gonna have
Yeah.
that stink. That there's a different stink in a male asshole and a female asshole.
Well, not if you
and you're
leave
gonna have
before
it.
he removes the fleshlight.
Oh,
Right.
I think you're going to smell it. It's just going to go in and out. You're going to light some candles in there. Bob, read us off the hits on this. What do we got here as far as the synopsis?
blast off when your erection invades this soft and squishy alien stroker. Make contact. Enter an infinity of pleasure with this frighteningly hot alien stroker. Conquer imaginary worlds with your proud and erect tool. At 8.7 inches long and 3.5 inches wide, you can insert up to 7.25 inches of yourself.
Not big enough. Sorry, 7.25. I'm slanging an ocho, brother. I mean, I'll leave an inch out, I guess.
But look, this is just for the guys, ladies, and also guys. Check out the Alien Nation Copperhead vibrating grinder.
Beautiful. Look at that.
Christ.
Round of applause, Delco, for that. Look
What am
at that.
What am I looking at here? What are all these?
Yeah,
appendages do?
what do they do for the lady?
The Copperhead vibrating grinder is an otherworldly alien creature like you've never seen before.
Sure haven't.
Protruding from the base is a tentacled projection and a sensual nub. Get it from both ends.
Yeah.
The entire surface is textured for gasmic sensation from nubs to bumps, suckers to ridges. Apply water-based lube and then lose yourself as you rub and grind yourself on the surface.
Yeah, there we go, Bobby. So that's $74.99. And I know what you're saying. Ross, that's a little bit expensive. But with the promo code Drinkin' Bros at checkout, you're getting 50% off. That fucker's only, what, 37 bucks? Because it got free shipping over there.
Yeah.
It's 50% off one item plus free shipping. Choose wisely.
Cheapest ticket to space you'll ever buy.
Goddamn right. You think fucking Bezos is going to let you get over there for 37 bucks? Sure isn't. Go to adamandeve.com, though, and take you and your woman to space for $37. Oh, Christ, dude. We're getting thrown off the air. We're getting thrown off the fucking air eventually. Look, guys, Adam and Eve is the biggest sex website on the planet. It's like the Cheesecake Factory, but for sex toys. It's endless. That fucking menu's endless over there. One item at adamandeve.com. Promo code Drinkin' Bros gets you 50% off and free shipping. Try this one, all right? We have a real live scientist on the show. Try that one. And then obviously, if you're going to be doing some butt stuff like you were mentioning, fleshlight in the asshole, man's asshole, potentially, you're going to need some vitamins, dude. You don't want to be weak in that bedroom. You don't have a weak game there. You got to go to firstform.com/Drinkin' Bros. Get the microfactors inside your body before you're doing that butt stuff. They got the big six in them. Antioxidants, CoQ10s, multivitamins, EFAs, fruits and veggies, and the probiotics. They come in 30 little plastic pouches there.
And those are meant to be taken orally.
Oh, I'm going to.
Just so, because we've been on a bit of a tangent here about space
Have
and
we?
wormholes and sticking stuff inside you. These go into your mouth.
I'll put them in my mouth now. Look, you know the rules on this show. I leave them next to my desk in case I forgot. Forgot today, so I'm going to take them. But it takes the guesswork out of vitamins, though, where you're not scraping them off the counter and all that other shit. Big fan of their liver detox as well. Taking that today, for Christ's sakes. But they're not just a vitamin company. They're also about protein. Tell us about their protein, D'Anthony.
Protein, yeah. If Harry Sisson had eaten more protein growing up, he wouldn't be such a little bitch. Don't be
Very
a little
true.
bitch. As my friend Mash Torrey says, being a bitch is un-American. So get your protein in. That's all. Just
all.
get it in.
Just get it in, bro.
Eat as much red meat as you can find. Eat eggs. And then when you need to supplement and add to your protein count, go to First Form because it's a highest quality protein that exists.
Best on the planet. Highly recommend the level 1 bars that are right in front of me here on the desk. Peanut butter chocolates and pretzels, amazing. Birthday cake is amazing, although somebody stole it. AJ Buckley, I know what you did. I know what you did, okay? And then I also love the cookie dough ones. Some of my faves, dude. Best in the biz, in my opinion. Love firstform.com/Drinkin Bros. And when you use our URL, you're going to get free shipping on orders over $75. And that is Firstform, spelled with a 1. That is 1STPHORM, firstform.com/Drinkin Bros. All of these, by the way, Bob posts in the audio descriptions out there, so you don't have to hit us up. Last but not least, today we got AmericanFinancing.net/Drinkin Bros. Talking about anybody with a home out there, all you homeowners. If you're struggling with credit card debt, consolidate it, all right? Most of these cards are 23 to 27%, for Christ's sakes. If you're a homeowner out there, take equity out of your house, pay off your credit cards, get that APR down to a fucking 7-8% right now. Hopefully Trump has got this down in the spring, like we're all expecting, and then prices will drop even further. But right now, man, if you're struggling with it because of inflation over the last 4 years during the Biden administration and all that other stuff, it's been brutal. You're reaching for, your plastic and your credit cards versus cash and your debit cards over there. So I get it, dude. Now's the time to get your financial house in order right before tax season starts. God, I hate that we even have to say it because we're like 2 months away from it already. Ugh, I hate it. Look, now's the time to do it. So here's the easiest part with these guys. They're a family-owned company. I've used them 3 times. They've been around for 25 years. They're mortgage consultants. They're salary-based, so there's no incentive for them to put you in a loan. It doesn't make any sense because they're not getting anything from it. And their customers usually save about $800 a month on average. It's a lot. And out there, if you're a homeowner, what that can do to a mortgage. So you're good on that, or a credit card payment. Jesus Christ. They don't charge any upfront fees or hidden fees on how much you save, and you might be able to close as fast as 10 days. Also, you might be able to delay up to 2 mortgage payments as well. They've helped hundreds of thousands of homeowners create meaningful savings. You can check out their Google reviews. They're lights out. And now is the time, right before tax season here. Get your financial house in order. So if you're struggling with this, we've used it. It's great. Check out AmericanFinancing.net/Drinkin Bros or call 866-887-2275 to learn how homeowners are saving $800 a month on average. That is NMLS 18234-2334 at www.nmlsconsumeraccess.org. Again, all of these links and phone numbers will be in the description in the audio as well as the video. One of our listeners is here to join us here for the next half of the show. Greatly appreciate you coming up here. Before you were here, actually, we've been chatting about this for the last few days with Gary, where we're going to send him next, Street Gonzo. Yeah. North Carolina's on the list. Yeah. And then we just happen to have cool people pop into the studio throughout the week. That
we got another one coming next week, too.
Yeah, that are like, hey, man, I'm there. Mm-hmm. Boots on the ground. I'm fucking working on this shit. So when we have these opportunities, we take them because you're a real dude who's actually working out there. How bad is it still in North Carolina?
It's getting strategically better, but it is still really bad. There's a lot of roadblocks that are slowing down the progression of the cleanup.
Physical or bureaucrat?
Both.
Okay.
Both. Let me back up the train a little bit. We do forest fire mitigation work over on the West Coast.
Okay.
But what motivated us to go to North Carolina was actually you guys. Dan going out to North Carolina. I was like, hey, I'm going to go out there. We're going to check this out.
Save our allies.
Yeah, save our allies. And I was like, you know what? We're going to move my entire company. We're moving out to North Carolina. We're going to get involved. We're going to help as many people as we can. One of the biggest roadblocks that we've been running into is there's so many powers above us that are skimming financials off the top.
Bureaucrats.
Before it gets to the actual contractors, the guys that own the excavators, that own the dump trucks, that are actually physically doing the work, that it kills it to where the rates are so bad that there's actually a lot bigger companies. I'm a small fish.
Sure.
But there's a lot bigger companies out there that are sitting on the sidelines because the money isn't very good because of the greed of the upper guys. You know what I'm saying?
Well, Dan has talked about this on the show a lot.
Yeah, I have. And my buddy Ian Burlingame, who's on Citizen recently, he's a former Green Beret, works in the medical field kind of now research-wise, but he's also kind of a philosopher, writes a lot about this kind of stuff. And He's convinced me recently to stop using the phrase deep state and start using the phrase mob state because it's run like a protection racket in the mafia. That's how this works. Everybody gets their taste along the way. It has nothing to do with the public good or taking care of Americans or anything. They fucking rob your ass and they take 40% of it. The same way they take 40% of your income and then they go on and take 40% of that fucking tax money too and put it right into their pockets. Right?
The guy that we're working for is literally called the Godfather.
No fucking way.
Everybody that I work with, they refer to this guy. I'm not going to say his name, but they refer to this guy as being the Godfather of hurricane work.
Okay.
What does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. And why?
Yeah.
Because he can get
gold rings
jobs
on
done.
every
I was
finger.
going to say, can you get jobs done faster? Do you have to kiss the ring?
Absolutely, you do. Absolutely, you
Fuck
do.
off, dude.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So what does that entail?
If you don't kiss the ring, they don't give you the good contracts. You don't get the decent money. They shoo you off. He actually in a meeting the other day called me Jesse James. He's like, "Oh, you're this young punk kid from the West Coast." Blah,
You do
blah,
kind of look like Jesse
I
James.
know,
Yeah. That's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got
Jesse
a monkey.
James was
he's
from
got a
Missouri.
monkey.
I don't want California stealing that valor.
That's true. But he was also banging Sandy Bulls for a while, Sandra Bullock. So you got that going for you, which is nice.
There you go.
But with that, are they looking to hire one big government's company and then pay them a shit ton of money to do it, and then there's a kickback?
So the way it works is we had FEMA out there. They didn't do shit. Everybody knows that, right? Then we got the Army Corps of Engineers out there that's allocating funds to what they call prime contractors. Prime contractors then hire what they call a tier 1 contractor. So the money trickles down. When you start to get into the tier 1, tier 2 situation, you get into the smaller fish like us, but that's where the skimming comes in. So you're getting guys that are showing up out there that all they got is a fucking clipboard and a checkbook, and they're skimming so much money off the top that way more money could be going to actually physically getting things done if they would streamline things like the Forest Service does out in the forest fires, where they have something that's called the Viper List. Viper List is a list of contractors that have a grocery list of equipment that they have.
It's part of so Cal Fire developed all of this.
Yes.
In the 1970s. Cal Fire invented the ICS, the Incident Command System, which to get certified on any of this, you have to go through ICS 3 and 400 and a litany of other classes as well. But essentially those two tell you about the command structure of the ICS, and a huge part of it, especially in Southern California where they have a lot of unincorporated areas, and this is one of the impetuses for the creation, is something called MOUs, or Memorandums of Understanding. And you have them between a county and an unregistered county, or a city and an unregistered place. And you have them also between the locales and private contractors who have the equipment on hand immediately. So there's no delay. We need recovery efforts now. Well, Dave over here has this stuff, and Jeff over here has this stuff. We can call those two guys and get it all done right now.
It seems like it's easy.
If you just do the work,
fix,
if you do the work on the front end, it's extremely easy just to. And look,
and the Forest Service has it dialed in.
Yeah, the Forest Service is really good at it, and they've been doing cities have been doing this for years. By the way, so local police have something. They call it different things in different cities, but it's called a next on the list, right? And it is a list of somewhere between 20 and 30 typically car wrecker services. And when they see an accident, they dispatch immediately has a list, and they call the next fucking company on the list. They answer, they come get the call.
Okay.
That's how it works. So we see it from the low level in just a little city somewhere all the way up to the federal level. We have these MOUs between states even. Like Arizona and California have MOUs about handling certain stuff, especially towards their border. There's no fucking reason that this is such a shit show all the time. And we spend billions of dollars on FEMA, and they don't do any of this. As a matter of fact, if you read the FEMA reports from Katrina, this is their main finding. Their main finding is that why are we recreating the wheel when Walmart and fucking other companies like this already have all this stuff and the distribution routes for it? We should just immediately call them and have them contract out instead of trying to have billions of dollars being spent on people that work for FEMA as an agency. It doesn't make any goddamn sense.
It doesn't. And you use the phrase small fish a few times. So why can't all the small fish get together, solve this as quick as possible, and then get out of there so these people can live their lives?
I guess some of the barriers that we would run into is, for example, you have to have a massive bond in order to work for the federal government. So you're talking millions of dollars.
What about permits?
That type of stuff. It's funny.
Because California's bad with permits.
Absolutely.
Horrific.
We got a lot of phone calls asking us to move our equipment back to California. I said, I don't have any fucking interest in it because of the permitting.
It's going to take 18 months to get
Did you
those
hear about
permits.
them turning around the firefighters because their trucks didn't meet emission standards?
Yeah. They did, yeah.
Are you fucking kidding me? People's houses are burning to the ground and you're turning fire trucks around? You should be drug out in the street and shot.
Yeah. And look, maybe we're close to that. Who knows? But, obviously we're trying to decide here where to send Gary next for street guns and all this. North Carolina's on the table. Now, we've been getting a lot of messages in the last 48 hours about what the real media is versus what USAID is paying for and everything else. And a lot of our listeners have been reposting the LA fires documentary that we have with Gary. And there's a video here, because I don't know what to believe and what's real and what's not real. Since you're here, though, I want to show you this video that a listener sent us. And tell me if this is true or false and this is actually going on in North Carolina.
Let's do it.
Bob, I just DM'd you on Twitter. If you can pull this up, because it seems unbelievable this is going on. You'll know if it's real or not, but it's the last one there.
And to touch on the money stuff a little bit more, Ross, like the money's there. The federal government is cutting the checks, but they're skimming so much of it that it makes it to where it doesn't financially make sense for small companies to come in.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And so this footage we're seeing here right now, is this actually how they're living in the fucking snow and these goddamn campers out in the woods?
Dude,
is that real?
That is people. That's not even slumming. That's good compared to some of the stuff that we're seeing.
That's probably the rich people, right?
Yeah,
because I know how much.
What's a camper cost? 50 grand?
Oh no,
more.
I bought my father-in-law over Christmas a couple of those ghost bed mattresses for his RV.
Yeah.
And I was like, how much does that fucking RV do? Yeah. And I was like, how much is it? And he was like, it's 90 grand.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's nice and it looks like these, but it's $90,000. I mean,
there's people in North Carolina that would kill for living in that. Like they're literally living in tents down by the river.
So that's the other thing I wanted to bring up.
Like Matt Foley.
Yeah, exactly.
But not a van, not even a fucking van, dude.
Not even a van. Just in
and if Chris
tents.
to be honest, if Chris Farley was there, I wouldn't care how cold it was.
No, I mean,
because he would have cocaine, and two, you could cuddle with him. He's a big man.
Sure could.
But
that's a win-win.
You know? But the tents. So they've been sending in tents as well, pictures of tents and firewood. And I mean, it looks like the fucking 1800s where they're trying to keep warm by the fire, and then they're going and living in these tents. Is that real stuff?
It's like Haitians beating their clothes together on the side of the rock.
Is that what's actually going on?
That's absolutely what's going on. But then you see like the Vanderbilts, that they get the Biltmore estate, top priority, one of the richest families in the fucking. I mean, what are they worth, Dan?
I don't know.
And so what's top priority? Making sure that the Biltmore opens up so everybody can go there, and all the rich and famous can go and party it up.
It's so funny you said that, dude. So when, and I've talked about this often on the show, when Sandy hit and I lost my house, FEMA comes in and everything else, and they distribute water, and we're going to send somebody to come and look at it. It's usually an outside contractor.
Right.
Mine was from Arizona.
Yep.
And the guy didn't know fucking dick about the area.
There's a lot of that going on over there, too.
No shit.
Yeah.
So you get nothing, and you get no help and everything else. And as this process goes along with FEMA, you're just like, my fucking God, dude. Yeah. I like, it just keeps getting, you're like, there's no way it can get this bad. And then they're like, I don't know, we're giving money. So then you read the article in the paper and you're like, holy shit, they gave $4 billion.
Yeah.
It was Christy, I think it was Christy. Oh, we give $4 billion. Awesome. Is any of that going to the homeowners or anybody else? Nope. It's going to the businesses first.
Yep.
So in New Jersey, they made sure all the businesses were repaired first so they could get the tourism back in there. They didn't give a fuck if you lost your house or anything else, because if tourism was there, then contractors would come in, build new houses and everything else, developers, and then, cool, man, it doesn't matter about the people. As long as the new people coming in have good restaurants to eat at, places to take their kids and families and everything else. So the businesses got rebuilt first before any of these homeowners. And this other interview I want to show, Bob, go to your Twitter here. From this lady is heartbreaking as well, and this was from like 6 days ago. So go ahead and post this one here.
On September 25th of last year, 2024, the hurricane came through, and when it did, it destroyed our trailer. Tree fell on it, and it ruined everything in our living room and our kitchen. It destroyed it. We didn't know what we was gonna do. We all evacuated and went to the building, and we went there for shelter because the trees was falling, and not even 5 minutes after we got out, the tree fell on it.
And this is what's left.
Yes.
Well,
All that's left.
we're very glad that you're safe and your whole family's safe.
Thank y'all.
And thank you for sharing your story with us.
It's amazing. Thank y'all for this help. It's so nice.
So they're helping out with trailers like we saw, and now it's snowing and everything else. You're good, Bob. Thank you very much. But with this, a normal person would watch this somewhere throughout America and be like, fuck these white trash people.
Yeah.
Like, who gives a shit? And it's just like, no, they had a house just like everybody else. Yeah, they live in a different part of the country, and not that they're not the same as things that we're doing on a daily basis, but like, doesn't mean they're not Americans.
We're
and
all
don't need
white
fucking
trash,
help.
to
Yes.
be fair.
Yes, dude.
We're all some kind of trash.
I took you to Long John Silver's, for Christ's sakes, dude. And it's it's just a different form of what you love, what you know, and what you do.
Absolutely.
That's kind of all it is, but we're all Americans at the end of the
100%.
day. So what the fuck are people like this going to do?
When
This is the kind of thing that creates generational poverty.
Yes.
Especially where
They're already
White
Yeah.
and black. By the way,
Yeah,
Katrina,
those-
you
yeah.
can apply this to
Yep.
Katrina.
Yeah, they'll never
apply this
come
to North
back.
Carolina. They'll never come back.
unless we do something specifically to help.
Blackwater will come in and cut them a check, and
But the check is small.
Oh, of course, yeah. They're going to dive on all the property. They're going to throw up
BlackRock.
Yeah,
not Blackwater.
Sorry,
BlackRock,
yeah.
yeah.
Shit, Eric, if you're out there, write me a check.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. But you know what I mean? And then, so where we're working is in the greater Asheville area. And in Asheville, it's a very touristy. There's a lot of Airbnbs. Of course, these people with these big checkbooks, they're going to come in. They're going to beat on those people's door. They're going to buy their property for
It's beautiful.
pennies.
I've
it's
stayed there.
beautiful out
I've vacationed there with my family many times.
We're
living in Wilmington.
we're seriously considering moving out there, and we live in northern Idaho, which is also beautiful.
Beautiful there.
Yeah.
I love Asheville.
Yeah.
And when you're there and you realize, because I've been there a
Lot of
million
queers.
times. It's liberal. It's liberal up there. I'll say that. A lot of purple. I'll be polite about it today because everybody's going through some hard times.
Now we're being PC.
Up there. Well, they're going through some hard times. I'm not going to fucking back up the truck after I've already ran over them. But with that being said, I know that terrain very, very well.
Yeah.
So I know like Kitten Hawk and all those other places up there. And it's, dude, there is no way to get up there because it's one road. Most of the roads are destroyed.
Yep.
And then the flood came so fast that it just evaporated
That
all
was
those
a tidal
structures.
wave. Like all the debris stacked up.
There's
like, it was
nothing left.
Nothing.
So if you're going to come up there, I look at it the same way as Gaza.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds fucked up.
Yeah.
But if you look at the Gaza Strip and all the bombs that have gone off and the destruction there,
100%.
it's the same way where Trump said it best the other day. He goes, you're going to have to clean all that shit up. Yeah. It's going to take a long goddamn time and then try to rebuild your life if there is a life to rebuild.
Yeah.
It is the same thing in North Carolina.
Yes.
Because my guess is, with the devastation up there and just knowing those roads and structures and everything after taking my kids and family and, even the markets and breakfast places and restaurants.
I mean, that
the
used to be the
infrastructure.
place where you escaped to. If you live on the coast in North Carolina, you went up to Black Mountain in Asheville.
to escape a hurricane.
To get away, yeah.
We did it one year
Yeah.
in Wilmington to escape a hurricane. But with that, you look at it and you're like, all right, here's what's going to happen. They're going to write them a check, try to get them down as much as they can, and be like, hey, you're lucky to get anything.
No, we know what we need to. That we do this internationally quite a bit, actually. And Trump is even like what he was talking about with Gaza, since you brought it up, is exactly that. What we should be doing is using the ACOE, the Army Corps of Engineers, right, to be a project lead on this. Obviously, we got to get rid of this fucking 40% slice some of these companies are taking off the top, but. To coordinate, to rebuild the place as rapidly as possible, and to, during the planning phase of that rebuilding, reach out to fucking corporations who are in the market to build new factories. Like, hey, we'll give you a fucking 7-year tax break. You don't pay any taxes. You don't pay, you get advanced depreciation on your properties for 7 years. Like, they did that for us to bring Black Rifle here because we brought like 500 employees here to Texas, right? In 2018 or whatever year it was.
Texas is doing with all the tech companies.
Tell some tech company or some fucking factory that wants to build a new place, a car assembly place or whatever the fuck. You build it here, you're going to get X, Y, Z credits for it, and you can rebuild that economy in 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's going to take 50.
Yes. And by the way, 3 to 5 years is being generous because of the devastation.
It'll take 3 to 5 years to clean the mess up.
Easily. Because there's one fucking road that goes up up into the mountains.
And
like
it's
that.
in the mountains. It's super technical. Like that's why we came, because we specialize in like steep ground cleanup work, and it's very very complicated.
It is. And then, I want to go to the dark side of this because some people were asking about, in regards to street gonzo talk with fires.
Yeah.
Why some houses stayed, why some were burned to the ground.
Yeah.
Like a Rick Caruso.
Yeah.
Or a Steven Spielberg.
Well, I mean, if you
that's
pay
just
somebody to clean the brush off your property and to make sure that there's clear lines between grass and concrete, then your house gets saved.
100%, right?
And now the city's supposed to be doing some of that, but also this has been a thing, we talked about it before, especially in LA. I've never seen anybody else really bitch about this, but in LA, there have been, you can look up police reports from like the middle 2010s of people getting into physical confrontations over, hey, you didn't clear the brush off your property. And they'll beat the fuck out of somebody over it, right?
Right.
And you see why, right?
That's been a drum that I've been beating in North Carolina, coming from the forest fire side of things. The amount of debris that is down, I mean, some of the brush is like 20 feet deep. All it's going to take is one fucking Gary out there throwing a fucking rosebud out in the brush, and they're going to wish they had a hurricane.
Yeah, he's doing good
Speaking
these
of that
days.
piece of
Yeah,
shit,
he
you
just
just
walked
walked in.
in. But no, but to that point, we live there.
Yeah.
There was controlled burns all the time in North Carolina, so like we didn't really have those issues.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is it's building up now
It's
because
getting
of
worse.
Well, we
Okay,
do them
gotcha.
on the military bases all the time too, because we go out in the woods and shoot and drop ordnance and shit.
Controlled burns.
And if we don't,
Controlled
we'll
burns,
fucking
yeah.
burn the whole goddamn base down.
But
right?
Wilmington, Carolina Beach, all that other stuff, like where we used to live,
Yeah.
there was controlled burns all the time, and it was just like, all right, cool. And then we'd just tell you,
They just outlawed burning in Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, like no burning whatsoever.
who did that?
The government.
Federal or states?
I guess it would be
It's state. The government, the federal government wouldn't have any jurisdiction.
And
over
those
that.
are Republican
unless it was
legislators, too.
unless it was a national
and
park.
So in North Carolina, it's weird. We elected a Democrat governor who
he
I
said
fucking
South
hate.
Carolina.
You said
Yeah,
South
South
It's
Carolina?
multiple
too.
states.
Okay.
And Tennessee's a reputed governor.
Repute
I
too,
believe, yeah.
but either way, I don't give a fuck about these guys. Because let's take North Carolina for example.
Sure.
Democrat governor, but then you got Republican all across the board representatives.
The legislature,
right?
yeah.
Yes. So there's no reason you couldn't go to the governor or go around the governor to remove some of this fucking tape, this red tape, and
Right.
say, hey, dude, we've got to help out people in our own fucking states.
Right.
Are they doing that at least or no?
I mean, we're kind of removed from that, so I couldn't really, answer that.
But you guys can't start a job until you get all the proper shit in place. So
Right. So, we are told where to go, what to do every step of the way. So, like, we're pretty removed from how
who is telling you?
the contractors that work directly with the Army Corps of Engineers are,
Okay.
are delegating to us what.
And are
whatever.
they doing a good job?
The Corps? Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, I would say the Corps, they should make a phone call over to the Forest Service because the Forest Service deals with this every year. Every year there's forest fires. They've got it really dialed in. They really do. And I've talked to some higher ups in the Corps, like, hey, like these, like reach out to your peers, figure out how to streamline this type of stuff and prioritize things. There's some waste that, I mean, I could go way into the weeds on what like the waste on how they handle like the debris and that kind of a deal. They kind of like, stepping over $1 to save a dime type scenario.
Totally, but that's what happened in California. So,
Right.
like, it's important to know it now and
Right.
at least get the message out and be
Right.
like, all right, cool, because I don't want
Yeah.
North Carolina,
Yeah.
because I hope to move back there someday and retire.
Yeah, I love it
for
there.
real, so
Like
do
I said, we're thinking about leaving
I
Idaho.
love it there. Still have a place there.
Yeah.
Like, I hope to go back one day.
Yeah.
I don't want to see North Carolina become a California.
Right.
Therefore, getting the message out and the word out of like, hey, dude,
Right.
you got to start doing these controlled burns and everything else.
Right.
Or, one guy with a fucking Marlboro Red could set the whole goddamn mountain on fire, and then we have the same thing happen all over again.
Absolutely. Yeah, and so back to the Forest Service stuff. So Bill Clinton, when he was in office, put in the Forest Service, and you can dig in this a little more. They used to be one of the only government agencies that was actually self-funding with the revenue from the timber sales when they would log and do the controlled burns and thinning the forest. And they were also able to set a lot of those funds aside for future forest fire, fighting, I guess. But now that's all by the wayside, and we've went out and done what's called tank trapping, and we rip up all of these logging roads. So when a fire comes in, the fires are a lot harder to get to, they're a lot harder to control, and they're a lot bigger. And we don't have any money to fight that fire, or we have to reach out to the feds to fund fighting these fires. So it's like the whole system. I mean, and that's the Forest Service, and they still have it dialed in a little better than like what North Carolina's got going on. But the whole thing needs turned
overhaul.
upside. It needs turned upside down. They need somebody like Elon Musk to go in there and be like, where do we trim the fat? How do we streamline this? How do we cut out the bullshit? How do we get rid of all these gold ring guys that aren't doing shit? Get him out of here.
Why did they get rid of what Clinton did, and who did that?
Clinton put in, it was the spotted owl, which you guys were talking about the other day. The spotted owl came in, and the environmentalists came in and said, hey, we need to fucking hug all these bunnies and save all these ferns. And so they shut down the Forest Service and the management of these forests. So what happens is the trees just keep growing. That's what trees do, right? They get bigger and bigger and bigger. It dries out the underbrush. And then when you don't clear the brush, like what Dan was saying, then here comes the fires. Well, we used to manage that, and we used to actually generate revenue, a lot of revenue, to where they were actually making money, keeping the parks open. They were using that money for like, how many parks have you went to a park recently and it's closed, or this campground's closed, or those bathrooms are closed because they don't have any fucking money. Right?
Interesting. I never thought about that.
Yeah, it's a mess.
Yeah, I was at a rest stop. I guess that's state funded, and it was closed.
Yeah,
and I was like,
or funded by the Forest Service.
Me and my kid ended up pissing behind the fucking structure, and I was just like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and we used to have the money. We used to have the most beautiful parks in the world.
The idea,
Roosevelt did.
Teddy Roosevelt started the MPS. Yeah, it's the idea that we would allow one human being to suffer, whether it's injury, death, or the loss of property because of some fucking owl. I'll kill every owl I see.
Right.
From now on.
Ask that lady in the video if she gives a fuck about that owl.
Spotted owl tastes like chicken.
Yeah, I'll snap that owl's neck.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck about owls.
Don't
Fuck
care.
you, dude. I love animals, right? But at no point am I going to put some wild animal's life over a human being. Now, my animal, I'll kill you if you even look at it the wrong way. But that's like a fucking some smelt. Some little fucking smelt, and we put 8 million gallons of water into the ocean instead of into the fucking reservoir we could fight fires with it. Are you out of your fucking mind?
It all ties together.
It does, and it's strange you bring up Clinton.
It's anti-humanism is what it is. These people want to get rid of they think so. All the plebs have become too powerful with decentralization and the internet and all this shit. And these aristocrats from thousands of years ago are just like, no, we can't have that. We got to peel back this onion a little bit. Well, you can peel back is the top of my fucking underwear and suck my dick.
Yeah, and that goes all the way down.
Goes all the way down.
Goes all the way down. But regarding Clinton, it's funny. You think about Democrats as caring about the climate and everything else, but he actually put those laws in place.
Yeah. He enacted them. He got
somebody
the ball
else
rolling.
stripped them. Yep. The funny thing is, man, I've said this on the show for years, is like, that's the one president I don't bitch about.
Yeah.
There was nothing that really happened during him and Trump. Nothing that really went on during that era where I was just like, all right, cool, man. We got through it and everything was fine. One
of the best things that I think that Trump has done is he's a businessman, right? Obviously. He surrounds himself with the best of the best in every industry. So when he's going to like the head of ag, who does he bring in? A professional farmer who's been doing that shit for 40 years that knows the industry.
Yeah, the Department of Energy guy now, instead of being some academic dickhole, is a fucking guy from oil and gas.
Exactly. Yeah. Who better to know the industry?
Yes.
You need to do that.
Under Obama, it was a fucking nerd who was a college professor or some shit.
Yeah. Right.
No, man.
Yeah.
No, fuck off. We need energy. We need oil, gas, and nuclear. Fuck off.
Bill was from Arkansas, Hey, man, I just want to get my dick sucked and help some people, And you're like, all right, cool, man. And Trump was just a business dude. You're like, all right, cool. Yeah. Those are the two that I can't really bitch about in my lifetime. Everybody else, you're like, what the fuck? But it's interesting, man. I appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah,
and,
happy to be here.
I hope this doesn't hurt you in what you're doing.
I don't care.
Okay. Well,
fuck it.
Nothing. What my friend Spencer Clavin says, and I think he may be paraphrasing somebody else, but nothing good can be destroyed by anything true.
Look, we believe in that, and we're glad you do too.
Just out here doing God's work.
That's what I say in the bedroom. Now, Archie, now's the point in the show we get to the Drinkin' Bro of the week, which is someone who has inspired you or helped you become the person you are today. Who would you like to give the Drinkin' Bro of the week to?
Oh, man. I think I probably would give it to my older brother, Mike. He was the one that turned me on to your guys' show a few years ago. And I've spent every day since then listening to your guys' show. I'm on Patreon, subscriber.
Fuck yeah, dude.
I'm active.
Patreon is wild.
Dan, I'm pretty sure Dan's... on your guys' Monday morning memes, several of those I've sent.
Oh,
you.
yeah.
I've been feeding you guys some pretty good ones, No, I'm just happy, and then like I said, I can't thank you guys enough for genuinely, you guys bringing to attention. I knew like being in the industry, when you guys went out to Carolina and talked about how bad it was out there. That's honestly what motivated me, and I spent a lot of money mobilizing out there. But it was because we wanted to go out there to help people, genuinely help people in North Carolina and make a difference. And the money is shit, but we're still there, and we're gonna ride it out. And I was like, you know what? As soon as I get a break in the action, yesterday was my birthday, so we decided to come down here. And I was like, we need to talk about it and kind of shine a light on it and see where the ball lays.
That's awesome, man.
So,
well, we appreciate you coming out. And the other weird thing, too, is when you're in an area that's affected like this, and especially when you're helping out, when you're doing something for your community and rebuilding it and everything else, it does kind of make you want to live there, where you're like, you know what? I fucking built this place. And then also it'll carry over to the next generation where you're like,
absolutely.
Hey, dude. Take care of.
I've got kids that are watching what we're doing.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
It's called the IKEA effect.
Yep.
When you assemble something, even if you only assemble the last 20% of it, you feel a greater sense of ownership over it.
100%.
The IKEA
Totally
effect.
true. Totally true. And it's the same we were talking about with Brian Keating earlier, where it's like, if you're coaching or mentoring or helping somebody else out,
absolutely,
you get more out of it and what you're doing. So thank you for all that you're doing, and keep us updated on everything that's going on there, okay? Grab a couple fucking cases of hard AF on the way out, by the way.
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
man.
Absolutely.
Right.
Cheers, man. Thanks for being here.
Cool.
Appreciate you guys tuning in at home. Go to iTunes, rate the show 5-star, and leave a quick review. Also, head on over to Spotify. It's just a 5-star. And you can walk away. We're getting close to 10,000. We're 9,500 over there. Just 500 more things, and I'll never fucking say it again. I promise, all right? The only thing that keeps this goddamn lights on is the advertisers. So please do it. For Anthony Holloway, I'm Ross Patterson. This is the Drinkin' Bros Podcast. Good night, everyone.